Did you see the article saying that liberals are more unhappy than conservatives? It was a bunch of different studies that came out.
It was in Atlantic article. I read the whole thing on stream 2 or 3 days ago.
Yeah. What are your thoughts off the back of that?
I have this thing on stream that I say where if I'm talking to an audience, I'm always going to talk from a pretty far left perspective. We're going to talk about systems. We're going to talk about class. We're going to talk about like what are the things that the government can do to create like a good environment for you, right? Because that's what I'm concerned about, like on a broad level. But if I'm giving advice to like an individual, I'm going to be the most hyper like anarcho-libertarian ever. Like if I'm talking to somebody like, oh, can I get some advice? Like, yeah, here's some advice. You care more about you than anybody else ever will. You're the only one that can improve your situation. Nobody's going to give you a handout. Nobody gives a fuck about you. You're going to do whatever you can, like on your own to get ahead in life. And that's it, right? And I talk about this sometimes, and people sometimes try to call me like hypocritical, or like when I give advice to an individual, like, well, what do you mean? What aren't you going to recognize that it's not fair for this guy? Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, sure. But to an individual, who the fuck cares, right? Like you can sit there and blame systems all you want and be a loser, or you can do your best to overcome it. Like that's all you could do, you know?
Now that seems so self-evidently true that you almost want to look at it as like obviously the way that we've just always talked about it. And it's interesting when you look down into how political groups and different tribes end up acting, you realize that that couldn't be farther from the truth. That people become so oriented in defining themselves, not just by what they think is the best approach moving forward, but specifically by what separates themselves from the other people. So if you're talking about an ideology because you think this is the thing we need to focus on, along with all this other stuff, any talk about the other stuff takes attention away from the thing that makes you distinctly different from the other group. So you're incentivized to pull yourself apart and to become more and more and more singularly minded. So you take something like layers. We have the macroscopic view, the microscopic view. In any scenario you can think of, you would never separate one from the other. It's important to understand how human beings work from like a cellular level, but we wouldn't say, well, because that's true, let's ignore all of the shit that goes on an interpersonal level. And if we're looking at the macroscopic view, when we're looking at people bounce around like specks of dust in this nebulous cloud, we wouldn't take the statistics that we pull from those large groups and then dismiss what goes on an individual level just because this one thing is true. We would find a way to marry them. And that's one of the things that bothers me about these fields of study is they rarely seem oriented towards an actual like grand unified theory of everything. They almost pretend as if these ideas have to exist at the expense of everything else. It's very strange. I mean, even when you look at physics, whether it's a tennis ball or a fucking planet, the rules that govern how they move are pretty much the same. But when you get very, very small, you find that vantage point requires a different understanding of how things work if you want to be able to know what's going on in that field. And interpersonal relationships are not any different. Your relationship as an individual to work or to the company you work for, that's not any different. So this was a breath of fresh air. This is kind of the duality mindset that I think attracts a lot of people to Eastern philosophies. Western society tends to be very all or nothing. We're very much this or that rather than this and that. So being able to take seemingly contradictory statements, figure out how to make them work, that is often the thing that is required to really get the big picture. Truth is not about just taking the one thing that works for you right now and then treating that as like the only lens that you can look at things through. So this was really refreshing, and I think it's a very useful way of looking at the world.
How do you marry those two worldviews then? How do you blend those two?
You ever play video games?
Yeah.
Have you ever played League of Legends?
No.
Okay. This must be true of like sports. I would imagine. I never played like football or basketball, but I imagine that in sports, there's probably a difficulty sometimes where it's easy to blame teammates for your losses, right? I played a single player game called StarCraft growing up, and I loved that game. It was one-on-one. If you lost, it was your fucking fault, full stop. When you play team games, it's very difficult to figure out what's your fault, or why did you lose? Was it my teammates? Did they fuck up? And you can get into a mindset where you start blaming everybody else, and what happens is you take no personal accountability. And the real mindset for improving in those games, and everybody knows this, even if they're upset at the time, you're not going to upset, they'll tell you, the real mindset for improving is all you can do is take the most responsibility for your own actions as much as you can and try to improve on that. Sometimes you might be in unwinnable games where your teammates will cause you to lose, but who cares? Find out what you can improve on and go forward. And we know that's true for games. We probably know it's true for sports. But then as soon as we come into the real world, it's like, oh, you're black, you didn't get a job? They were probably racist. Oh, you're a woman? Your application got turned over? They were probably sexist. How can you expect that mindset doesn't fucking destroy a person's ability to navigate the world when they've constantly been told that classes around them are what are keeping them down? And the amount of, I feel like the amount of personal agency you have goes
It rips,
so low. Yeah.
It rips the agentic person out of it.
So listening to this, you think that this is obviously rhetoric from a far right-wing conservative. And then you realize that the person espousing this is a streamer, has blue hair, is an avowed progressive. And you realize that this type of information can be given, this pill can be given alongside the facts of all of the inequities and all of the systemic problems. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And I think that is so key, not just to political ideology, but to how we go about solving things in our life. The one thing I like about his discussion, first of all, it's absolutely true in every competitive field you go into. There is the individual's responsibility and there is the team, the organization's responsibility. Those are two different things and they both have different roles, but you can't have one without the other. They have to go together. And his discussion of strategy, this isn't about recognizing what is or isn't fair. This isn't about a search for justice or what makes you feel better. It's about fucking strategy, because when you're on a team, the goal is to win. The goal is to get the right answer. And that means you have a system that is made, that is designed by the coaches and the people involved that are coming up with the methods to organize the resources they have, that they are all set up for success, but the individuals also have to come ready to play. And when you go through team sports, it's why team sports are so valuable in school. It's because, guys, and I've said it 100 times, we do not have young kids put on pads and run into each other on a field in front of hundreds of their friends and family because we think it's really funny to watch. We do it because team sports at that level is a massive character builder. It teaches you how to hold yourself accountable and go through really hard shit in the service of the group. So those two things go together. They're not different. For the group to function, you are accountable to be the best that you can be. You are not to be the weak link. Now, if we're on the outside and we're trying to identify problems on different levels, the group versus the individual, there might be a systemic problem where the coach sucks. There might be bad plays being ran. The field you play on might be really shitty. The sun might be in your eyes. Who the fuck knows? But you as an individual don't have control over that. The elements designed to reinforce those systems, the way you go about that, that's entirely different than you getting your shit together. And no matter what shitty team you play for, no matter what god-awful system you were born into, every single time you get a better result when you just take accountability for yourself. So from the competitive aspect, I think that's absolutely huge. And importantly, knowing that the focus you give on what is fair is entirely different on the thing that will get you forward. A lot of people think progress and justice is the same thing. It absolutely the fuck is not. I mean, sometimes it can overlap, but they can also be very, very exclusive to each other. That's one of the oldest tropes in storytelling, is the man who was wronged and who doesn't just seek out recompense for what he lost, but is out to light himself on fire just so that he can burn everything down with him. That search for justice, that internal sense of satisfaction from balancing the scales, will cause people to stew. It will cause them to become inactive. It will cause them to destroy their own lives, not because it's going to take them to a better place, but because it feels good. It's cathartic to sit down and say, well, I'm not going to do anything, but fuck it, who cares? The system's rigged anyways.
And you can have a world in which you want to have the driven individual agency, personal sovereignty, all of that shit. But you also happen to hold this political view that doesn't really seem to work. And it seems to be a lot of friction going on.
So I'm going to push back against Chris a little bit here. And he's an excellent interviewer. It's one of the reasons he's blown up so much. It's no surprise. I don't know if I have American brain and I just hear a British accent and I think they have a IQ of 300, but I've listened to him live. I've listened to him speak. He's very good at staying present with the conversation. I had to stop doing interviews because I have an attention span of 19 seconds. And if people talk too long, I start twiddling with my thumbs and I forget what I was doing. He is extremely engaged and he adds questions that fuel the conversation. It sets the other person up to just hit a home run over the fence. So it's really cool to watch. So I'm not entirely sure if he is saying this because he thinks it's hard or difficult to reconcile those things, or if that's just something for Destiny to sink his teeth into to kind of flesh out his ideas a bit more. But responding to this, I think it's not only that they can be reconciled, I don't see an actual representation of how real life works that doesn't involve those things being reconciled. That doesn't make sense to me, because any system that is sufficiently complex can be looked at from multiple different angles. And it's not just like a spectrum of potential solutions, but like I said, it's layers. So when you're zoomed in very, very close, that's going to look very different than when you're zoomed out very far away. And the picture that paints is going to be different. And the types of tools that you use to solve problems are going to be different. And the truth of one doesn't somehow invalidate the other. So this dynamic of you as an individual responsible for yourself in service of this group as a whole. I mean, the team analogy, it doesn't get any better than that. What is a nation if it's not a team? If it's not something that should have an organization to set it up for success, knowing that the engagement of fully fleshed out, fully capable, self-actualized human beings is actually how you get the best result given those things. And we get this kind of chicken or the egg, right? Because those strong individuals come out of a system that produces those strong individuals. But those individuals also have to come out and reinforce that system for the next generation. So it's easy to play chicken or the egg and say, well, I didn't come out of that system. I wasn't given those tools. But here's the thing. If you wait for the system to turn, if you wait for that giant wheel to turn in your favor, for all of the injustices and inequities to smooth out, then there's never a reason for anybody to do anything. The only way that that wheel gets turned is if everybody starts from the assumption that it starts with me. And it's not just me overcoming the odds to become a millionaire. That's not it. The way that you create change is you influence the people closest to you, not on TikTok, not on social media. Start with yourself, your friends, and family. If you can influence them and in turn get action from them, you've had a massive fucking win. You don't do that by jumping up 10 income brackets. You do that by showing that you as an individual can start here and linearly, predictably, reliably move forward over time and improve your lot in life. It doesn't matter if it's by 5%. If you set the example to other people that you can create a strategy and improve fucking anything, it doesn't have to be a massive win. Just show that you can reliably improve. That is the most influential, contagious shit in the world. And that is how you get this grassroots movement of building strong communities where before there weren't any.
There is friction. I don't know how to explain it, but there is a way. There's got to be a way to do it. You have no idea what I'm going with this. I know, but like, so for instance, right? I've been taking the gym very, very, very seriously for the past like 6-7 months. I've been taking it pretty seriously for the past 2 years, but very seriously for the past 6-7 months.
Good man.
Okay. When I go to the gym, okay, it's hard. Okay. And it's hard to progress. And I'm probably starting off at a lower level of muscle, and I'm probably taking a little bit longer to progress in my lifts than I would otherwise. And when I go to the gym, two things have to exist in my mind at the same time. One is, okay, progress is going to be a little bit slower than me. Okay. I know that. I understand that. Okay. I accept that. But I still have to try as hard as I can. Those two things can't counteract each other. And if you're not careful, the problem is that, like, in a way, 308T for me, is it nanoliters per decigram or what the fuck, whatever it is, right? 308 for me is like the liberal mindset. And being as big as possible is the conservative mindset, right? If I let that 308 number define me, why the fuck should I even bother going to the gym? I'm never going to be as big as I could have been if I would have started lifting at 15. I'm never going to be as big as a guy willing to do TRT. I'm never going to be as big as a guy that's just natty, more testosterone than me. Fuck it. Why should I waste my time? But if I go to the conservative route, right? Okay, well, it's taken me 6 months of grinding to get my squat up to like 195. Like another guy would be at like 315 by now. Right? I'm a fucking weak piece of shit. Why the fuck am I like, I can't, I'm trying every day. I'm just going to add 5 pounds to the bar. I'm going to injure myself like every 2 months, right? That's like the conservative mindset. It's like, fuck, I don't care about this shit. I'm going to work as hard as possible. And it's funny because in a way, through my kind of like lifting history, I've dealt with both of these, right? On the conservative mindset, one is like, I don't know how many people realize, it's like pushing yourself in the gym is actually really easy. The hard thing is the discipline to control your meals, your sleep, and the routine. That's the really hard part. It's really easy to go to the gym and work out till you get injured. I can do that all day. And I've done that before. It's like, fuck it. 10 more pounds on the bar. Fuck, I just fucking snap my shit. Fuck, I injure my shoulder. Fuck me, And then on the liberal side is also where it's like, fuck me. My T is low anyway. Do I really need to be shredded? Right? I got a lot of fucking money. I fuck a lot of women. I'm really successful online. Who the fuck cares if I have low T and I don't work? Yeah. Right? So I don't know how I do it. I manage to for most things in my life somehow, but you have to be able to balance those two things out where it's like, I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can because I want to be the best version of myself. And I recognize that how good I can be as myself might be controlled by some environmental factors. But like there's the environmental factors are saying that I can exist in this range. But in this range, the conservative or personal factors are going to determine where in this range I exist.
It's all on you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. And that's why I get so frustrated on so much of the discussion around everything from politics to social stuff to fucking dating, talking about women do this, men do this. It doesn't recognize that everybody exists in their own strata with their own immediate range that they can move around in. No matter where you are, it is in your best interest and it is within your power to move around within that strata. So looking at what like girls at clubs, that like wealthy local business owners and fucking media personalities go to, like how they're scouting for dick at the club has nothing to do with like all of the women that you might engage with at work, at school, in your neighborhood, at community functions, and so on. So understanding the strata that you're in. And again, this goes back to strategy. Everything about what he's saying, if you notice, it's solely oriented around how do I win? This is the mind of a gamer. He doesn't give a fuck. He's like, oh, I have this problem. I have this fucking complex shit that's like impossible and most people suck at. Well, I'm going to sit here and fucking obsess over it until I figure out how to game it. I'm going to figure out where the handle is and I'm going to crack this motherfucker. If you start with that perspective that the answer, getting the right answer is the most important thing, and you start chipping away, then eventually you start to come up with solutions and then they snowball. And that's the beautiful thing. And once again, it's very different than looking at the macroscopic level where you see the actual obstructions and the unfairness and the things that are stacked against you, because once you start obsessing on those, that limits your ability to do anything at all. And most people, it causes just massive fucking inaction. So he's defining, and this is painting with a broad brush, but he's talking about conservatives as being more action-oriented, not willing to look at obstacles. It's on you. Very broadly, obviously, there's lazy conservatives. I've known a few. On the other hand, there's the kind of liberal, the more leftist mindset, which is so much more around like, why are we even talking about you as an individual? The system's so fucked. And because these two ideologies have been exaggerated over time with people having it in their best interest to double down, to push them further away from looking anything like the other side, because of that, now you have these two ways of looking at life that by themselves aren't complete and by themselves have massive fucking pitfalls. And that is a really big problem. He says something in this interview about leftism, progressivism, not really going out of its way to endow people with the tools. He talks about the factors that insulate him. He talks about the factors that have set him up for success, that he learned how to cope, how to deal, strategies that he uses to overcome hard shit. That's kind of an honest complaint. If you are on the progressive side and you're struggling, what tools have they given you right now to be able to cope? It's like, okay, the situation's shitty. Abso-fucking-lutely. But what can I do about it right now? Because I have to put food on the table. I'm stressed. I'm working 2 jobs. I have kids to feed and everything's difficult. I'm neck deep in debt from medical bills. It's like, what do I do now? And because things are hard doesn't mean that there aren't solutions. But those have to come from 2 different people. It's kind of like having, mom is over here to pat you on the back and tell you it's not your fault. And then dad's over here to kick you in the ass and tell you to stop being a lazy piece of shit. And by themselves, that leads to a lot of dysfunction. But together, you get something that kind of looks like a well-rounded view of life. I also like the discussion about expectations in the gym because that's huge. God, I made the mistake of tuning in to watch one of his live streams where he was programming in real time. And poor Destiny does the exact right thing. For somebody who's sedentary, for somebody who just needs to spend a minimum amount of time chipping away and getting better to see progress, who isn't going to spend 3 fucking hours in the gym, he's doing something really, really straightforward. He's doing a linear progression. It's kind of inspired by starting strength, just focusing on compound lifts, just focusing on the progression. And that's exactly what he should be doing. And he's seen a lot of progress so far. But watching him do that in real time with his chat, responding to his chat, gave me so much fucking anxiety because I know what those comments are. And it's people telling him, why aren't you doing more volume? Why aren't you doing core? Why aren't you doing this exercise? Why aren't you doing everything that you literally aren't doing right now? Why aren't you just doing everything? And with expectations, it's easy in his position to see how everybody's growing, what everybody's telling him to do, to hear all of this shit and think that there is some voodoo out there that if you just pair the right amount of shit together, you're going to be the next big thing, the next Rock, the next Mike O'Hearn. And with expectations, it is extraordinarily important that you understand that there are things that you can control. There are ways to establish your program to fit your lifestyle, as in not needing to spend all that time in the gym, not needing to do every exercise under the sun, that if you start small, set a baseline, and you focus on progression, you're going to improve. And it's not about taking this quantum leap to being the fucking best in the world. It's going to get a movie contract because you're so fucking jacked. It's like, yeah, eventually if you want to get more and more and more specialized so you're super dick skin shredded, absolutely, that's fucking great. But for the average person, you need to look at that level, at that strata, and figure out how you can move within that. And as you get to the top, then it's time to reevaluate and try some new things. So I think the analogy of sports, of gaming, and of gym time, I can't think of an any more useful approach of where to take these principles and meld them together.
One of the other things, again, that I've been thinking about is how this relates to people's lack of capacity or desire or motivation to deal with difficulty or suffering or any kind of anything that requires you to push through hard stuff.
Yeah, there are 2 concepts. It's called stress and eustress, where yeah, oh my God, I'm so glad a friend taught me this like 2 years ago. I've never heard of this before. It was really, one thing that's really difficult for me is I love stress. It is very empowering to me. When I'm in stressful situations, I feel like I'm alive. Okay, when people are gunning for my career, writing big things, accusing me of shit, it's very fun for me to navigate those things. It's like, oh fuck. There's stress, which is bad for you. Physiologically, it's a horrible thing. It causes a lot of negative. And then there's something called eustress, which is similar to where you're stressed. But the difference is for eustress is when you're going through stressful things, but you feel like you've got tools to deal with it. And stress is when you feel helpless. And despite how weird my upbringing is in my life, whatever, I've never felt helpless. I've always felt like if something is fucked, I'm the only person who's going to do anything about it. I have to do something. We'll figure it out. You know, I'm going to have to work fucking 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, but we'll do something, you know? So for me, stressful situations are like, okay, it's challenging, but like I got to work my way through it. But when kids don't have the ability to learn how to manage or deal with stressful environments, then stress becomes this like horrific, all-encompassing like blanket of darkness that falls on you. And you're like, fuck, I can't do anything. I'm paralyzed. I don't know what to do. Like there's so much. And like they have no idea how to deal with any of the adversity. So yeah, I agree that like people today, like if the adversity is not plowed out of their way, they basically turn into these like helpless frumps of nothing that like, can't deal with anything.
Now, again, remember, we're talking about strategy. So the strategy of living a good life, of showing that you can finish what you start and that you can make forward momentum in your life, a big part of that is being able to be durable, being able to insulate yourself from hard things. And this characterization of stress versus eustress, it's not just a useful way of thinking about it, it's an essential way, because all stress isn't the same. I know it's memeable, but Jordan Peterson's discussion about the lobsters in 12 Rules for Life, he talks about life at the bottom of the ocean. When you're low on the totem pole, when food and resources are scarce, mating opportunities are scarce, that your fucking stress levels are through the roof, and it is an absolutely miserable experience. And anybody who can relate to that in their own life knows what it feels like. You can't be effective, you can't think right, it's just pure hostility. Stress by itself will absolutely fucking kill you. The difference between that and eustress, the stress that makes you better, is the tools. Like you said, it's the tools you have. Like, can I attack this thing? And not only is that something that you can survive, but it actually makes you better because you become better and better and better at using those tools to solve those problems until it's something that doesn't even faze you. And that's how you turn yourself into an absolute monster. I mean, I can cite Anti-Fragile. That was an absolutely great book. And it described things that are fragile, which break easily. The opposite of that isn't just things that are durable. It's things that actively grow from stress. So what would break something else actually causes this other thing to grow. And there's systems you can describe that way. There's organisms you can describe that way. The human body, like bones in the human body, without stress, they atrophy and decay. With stress, they thicken, they get bigger and stronger. So being able to look at things through that perspective is absolutely huge. It's a game changer once it clicks. And that forces you to look at things from the perspective of, what are my tools? What can I do to get a leg up on this? And this also shows how important it is to come from a culture or to live in a household where these things are instilled in you at a very early age. Destiny has very conservative parents, and I think that influenced him quite a bit. The community he grew up in, I think he's from Nebraska. And you see the dynamic between these like more rural areas and more like city areas where there's more systems put into play. There's a reason that they skew more conservative or Democrat, because in really rural areas, you're more likely to have people who live off the land, people who farm, people who work with their hands, people who have to provide for themselves because most of the business is small business. And it's people that are working for mom and dad's shop. It's people that are working on the ranch. And you have to have that very individualistic high standard in order to really be as productive as you need to be for the community as a whole to thrive. Whereas if you live in the city and everything's based off structures, that everything's going to city council meetings and dealing with local politics, because that dictates, everything from schools and public transit to, the roads getting fixed and all of the social programs that attempt to keep people afloat. It's very easy to see that more as a machine that has to be well-oiled than as some conglomeration of individuals doing the best they can. So that kind of explains, in my opinion, why you get this different lean on agency versus the system between kind of leftist and more right-centered perspectives. And again, I think they're both extremely important.
What current dating optimizes for, though? It optimizes for those easily displayable objective metrics of success. It's the Rolex on your Tinder profile. It's the number of followers that you've got. It's the blue tick. It's the car. It's the size of the boobs. It's a lit filler, etc., etc.
Yeah. And for fucking men today, it's fucking TRT.
It is
TRT. I think guys are heading towards a world where we're finally going to start to see how negative social media can affect you in the way that has been affecting women for so long. Okay? Why? Because all these motherfuckers now, okay, all these guys, I don't give a fuck. 99% of fitness influencers are on fucking gear. And TRT counts as gear now. Okay? Every motherfucker does. I'm seeing so many videos, so many things where guys are like, oh, these are like my 6-month results for like lifting or whatever. And these guys are like, they're lean as fuck. They're getting huge. And it's like, oh, like I'm 27 lifting for the first time in 5 months. This is my, like, bro, really?
So why is that? What's that got to do with the female impact of social media?
Because I think for women see like a whole bunch of like, this is what women should look like. You should be this and that. And like everybody's using like filters and lip filler and
but TRT is the...
For guys, it's like, yeah, it's going to be nice. Like, oh, well, if you're a guy and you've been lifting for 6 months. You should look like this. And it's like, no shot. Yeah.
Interesting.
And I'm seeing more and more of those like pop up everywhere now where it's almost like, and because TRT is so accessible these days.
Have you ever had your levels done? Have you ever checked what your tests are?
They're very low.
What do you think?
The last time I checked is 308.
Wow, that is low.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like nearly subclinical, I think. Like you would.
It's like, I've heard the range is anywhere from 300 to 1,000.
So you've got 8. You're playing with 8.
Yeah, or 350 to 1,000, so I'm already below it. But I don't have any of the symptoms of low T, so like, yeah, I'm in the gym, I'm doing my best, but yeah.
Well played.
And there you see Destiny start to move towards the black pill, because that's one of the things. Well, the system is fucked because, TRT. And he finishes strong. He says, hey, I'm still in the gym, still doing my thing. That's fine. But you see it even in him. Once you start training, you start looking at your own body, you start evaluating yourself against everybody else. All of a sudden, that it doesn't really matter what your political ideologies are. Very few people can help themselves from turning the lens to kind of look at, well, what's that motherfucker doing over there? Why is he having a better time than me? And that's absolutely funny. I don't disagree with his statement necessarily. I think because he's new to it and TRT is kind of more recently starting to be a popular thing, that he's attributing that to this big upswing. I don't think so. Men aren't going to see a radical change in their physique in the future, more so, and men as a whole, as a group, aren't going to see these radical changes more than we've already seen. We're not going to see that. First of all, TRT and gear use is different. If you're not working with like 100 milligrams a week because a doctor looked at your test levels, said, oh, you're struggling, and I think it's your low T, here's a script. If that doesn't apply to you, you're not on TRT, you're on recreational testosterone use. That's called gear. One of my biggest pet peeves, you can talk about fake natties all you want. I hate all the people that religiously cite TRT as their mode of hormone use when they don't need it. It's over the limit. You'll hear guys say, oh yeah, I'm only on 300. That's not a lot. And in powerlifting circles, bodybuilding circles, that's not a lot. It's still like triple of what somebody's going to be using if they're getting a script for it. Also, TRT by itself, if it is TRT, is not going to necessarily lead people to have dramatically different physiques. I know a lot of people that use tests recreationally that look like shit. If you have a genetic responder who responds very well, they take gear and they just, even a little bit, they absolutely explode. Those are people that were probably already kind of muscular, kind of lean, and probably already training. So you're not going to see a huge gap. I mean, the damage as far as hormone use in the male population is already done. I only see it exploding if more mainstream figures come out. The Rock is the one I always talk about because everybody's on his ass about being a fake natty. If you want to triple the amount of kids that are on testosterone right now and other drugs, have The Rock come out, give his cycle. That will guarantee that the amount of kids starting with steroid use just absolutely fucking explodes. So all the people really concerned about fake natties, remember there's consequences to these actions. Now, when I look at Destiny, and you can look at him and you can be like, well, of course he has low T. And that's the other side of the coin as far as these biases we have. You look at him and you're like, well, he sits at a computer, he games, posture, whatever it is, body fat percentage. This is not necessarily the body type of someone with low T. This is a body type of somebody who's just been sedentary for a long time, sitting in a chair for 10 hours a day streaming, spending 8 hours a night laying down sleeping, spending very few hours out of the day on your own 2 feet. That's what it is. And he even says, I don't have symptoms of low T. Testosterone is a very complex thing. So you have guys that have low T that can still perform very well. I routinely cite a member of my gym who was he was overweight. He was a big guy, but his T was under 100. Now the normal range, they'll say anywhere from 200 or 250 up to like 900 or 1,000. There's a range. That's a range of normal. It's not like, oh, I'm 350, 300, so it's low. It's like, no, you're in the range of normal. Whether or not it's low depends on how your metabolism works, how your body works, and what is normal is going to determine how your body works and how much tests you need to operate normally given all of your other biology. So he doesn't have symptoms of low T. He has symptoms of being a lazy shit for so many years, and now he's trying to fix it. So people can read that. You heard Chris, oh, that's really low. It's like, well, everybody is taking 500 milligrams of test, and even the Chads. Chris probably has natural levels like 600. My levels normally are about 600. But here's the thing: when my levels were absolutely tanked, when I went off gear like 2 years ago, 6 months later, I lost a bunch of strength, a lot of size. I got kind of fat, so everything kind of inverted a little bit. I was still really fucking strong. When I dieted down and my test levels were higher because I went on a post cycle really late, I was actually a lot weaker then than I was when I was a little bit fatter and had lower test levels. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. But the buddy that I knew that was under 100, he had a 450 bench press. So there's also guys that can run a little bit higher, might not necessarily be that strong, that muscular. There's a lot of complex shit that goes into it. Bottom line is somebody being jacked doesn't equal testosterone use. Somebody being, fat or weak doesn't equal low testosterone use. There's a lot more complexity to it than that. But bottom line is he's doing what he needs to be doing. He's focused on himself, and more power to him for that. That's what you all should be doing, because being an angry, bitter piece of shit because somebody else opted to go a different route or to push the envelope a little bit more has absolutely fuck all to do with what you do to get bigger and stronger. That is the most important thing to understand. And it's funny because when we talk about social shit and politics, there's an idea that what other people do actually puts tension on these groups that you're worried about. In training, it puts no tension on you. In real terms, somebody else taking steroids doesn't put any real tension. I mean, you can start to pull shit out of your ass like expectations and it influences you to do this, that, or the other thing. But anybody can hunker down, look at what they're working with, and take steps, put one foot in front of the other to grind it out until they are satisfied with the results. And then, the real caveat is you're never satisfied with the results. So 20 years later, you're still working through injury and inflammation because you still have severe body dysmorphia. So welcome to the club. Anyways, I really wanted to cover this because I thought this was a really valuable discussion. I think it touched a lot of things that are really important to us in general as human beings and how we navigate our place in society and also how we try to do great things in our life. So I really thought this was a great talk. So props to Destiny, props to Chris Williamson. This was really good. Hopefully, if you guys respond to this stuff well, I'll do more of these in the future. So let me know what you think in the comments section. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.